Hello, everyone, and welcome again to an episode of D.E.I. Deathwatch, where we chronicle the downfalls and the doubling downs of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm your host, Scribelight. Welcome to Monday. Hope everybody's doing well on this beautiful Monday afternoon, at least where I am. Start of a new week, full of surprises, I suppose. Also, my birthday is this week. Yes. On Thursday, it'll be my birthday. It's also TEDx Day, TED Excellence Day. So looking forward to maybe doing something special for that. I'll have to think about it. Oh my gosh. Keeverdam, thank you so much, Keeverdam, for the #1 Dogcat Fox. Oh, Dogcat Fox.
Wowie, wow.
Oh, there's a P-Dog Night Dogcat Fox. Thank you, Keever. That's very generous of you. And speaking of generosity, I appreciate you all donating your time to attending the show today. And who would that be? Alexander. Good afternoon. Walter Tomaszewski. Hello. Abacaz Diabli. Hello. And Snortapupus Cuber. Hello. Jill Powers, the River Daughter. Good afternoon. Morgan King. Hello. Who else is here? Funtime Bats. Mike Savage Blarg. That should just be your real last name. Savage is your middle name. You're just Mike Savage Blarg now. I've said so, therefore it is. Angelverse. Hello. Robert Pincus. Good afternoon. Anybody else? Unfair Ophelia, hello? Yeah. Unfair Ophelia, hello. That's what I meant to say. It came out goofy. I don't know why. But someone who is not goofy in any way, shape, or form, that's Miranda Stone. You guys know about Miranda Stone, don't you? Well, let me tell you. And Kirsten Scholl over on the X Machine. Yes, guys, I'm simulcasting on X. So if you happen to have an X account and can see this stream over on there, please do share it out or watch natively, I think is what they would say. Professor Chaos, hello. Owen Portnoy, hello. Susano a la Richard, good afternoon. And to anybody I missed, anybody lurking, anybody in the future, hello. All right, let's get into it. We got a lot of stories today. I want to start off with one that caught my attention because it harkens back to a stream I did a long time ago. Time has dilated so much I can't tell you. It was a year or more ago. But on this stream, I showcased a series of clips from some interviews that had been done with chief diversity officers from several different organizations and institutions. And some of you in the chat may remember this. I was repeatedly struck by a word that each one of them kept repeating every time they were asked the common question of, what does it mean to be a chief diversity officer, or what is your job like? And that word was lonely. They kept talking about how lonely a position it was. And I went off on that a bit. And over time, I started to notice things that lent itself to that idea. You had things from both Bridge, if you remember Bridge, and other organizations that have sort of support networks for chief diversity officers. Now, why is that? Well, I have some theories, but I think this article kind of covers some of them. Let's find out. Chief diversity officers are struggling. A recent report finds that CDOs are doing their best to navigate state-level DEI bans, but it's affecting their mental and physical health. Guys, their mental and physical health. What is happening to CDOs? Campus chief diversity officers are under significant pressure as state and now federal DEI bans proliferate. Their work has been repeatedly questioned, rebranded, or slashed in recent years, and they've been tasked with difficult decisions about how to respond. It's taking a toll on them, according to a recent report by researchers at the University of Michigan and George Mason. I'm going my Sean Connery on there. George Mason University. And that was even before Donald Trump was reelected. Yeah, I'm glad at the start of this article acknowledges that pushback against DEI did not begin with Donald Trump's second presidency, but has been going on since at least late 2022 and certainly early 2023. The report based its findings on hour-long qualitative interviews with 40 chief diversity officers conducted between November of 2023 and June of 2024 in states with proposed or enacted laws or executive orders against DEI or critical race theory. It found that CDOs took a variety of approaches to navigating an increasingly hostile political environment, and the challenges of doing so have had a detrimental impact on their health and careers. Do tell. Jeffrey Grimm, well, that's an appropriate last name, a co-author of the report and assistant professor of higher education at George Mason, said chief diversity officers generally, quote, came in wanting to help all faculty, staff, and students excel and be successful, unquote. Excel and be successful in rampant discrimination? And university leaders eagerly hired them to do so, publicizing their work during the national racial reckoning that followed the police killing of George Floyd in 2020. Yes, everybody and their brother was virtue signaling through employment. Look how not racist we are with our chief diversity officer, that we've no doubt hired on the basis of what they look like to oversee an organization and an initiative that isn't purely there to discriminate on the basis of race and gender. Look how good we are, guys. Now, diversity officers report feeling not just stressed and anxious, but also socially isolated from other executive-level leaders because of growing tensions around DEI work in their states. Okay, so this goes back to something that I've talked about previously, and especially when speaking about the idea that CDOs, chief diversity officers, are lonely in their jobs. When you think of a chief diversity officer, what comes to mind? I've asked myself this several times over the last day or so in preparation for this stream, because it doesn't easily come to mind. What does that mean? When I think of chief financial officer, what do I get in my mind? I get something that's admittedly relatively stereotypical and more caricature than anything else. I think of someone sitting behind a big oak desk with a mechanical calculator, tapping out things and reading receipts and marking down ledgers and things, right? Because they're an accountant. They oversee the accounting arm of the business, something that you can qualify as a necessary part of running a business. When I think of a chief marketing officer, what do I think of? I think of Don Draper. I think of somebody that's like throwing out ad ideas and trying to get the message out to the public and the consumers and things. I think of something tangible, something that has some utility to the health of a business. When I think of a chief diversity officer, I am almost at a loss for words. Like, what does that mean? What does that look like? And here's the only thing I can think of. What does a job mean? Well, a job means that you are serving in a role that has a expected outcome for you to get your pay. And how do you measure someone's outcome? Well, it's their output, it's meeting their numbers, etc. So how does a marketing executive, earn their pay? Well, they have to hit certain goals of getting the message out, getting out certain campaigns, getting a return on the consumer feedback, and so on, right? How do you measure that? How do you measure a chief financial officer's success? Well, are the books balanced? Do the financials make sense? Etc. How do you measure the success of a chief diversity officer? Racial and gender quotas. That's it. That's the only way to measure their success. So a chief diversity officer must, in some way, shape, or form, be overseeing every other department to make sure they're being aesthetically pleasing. They don't contribute to the work of the accounting department. They don't contribute to the work of the marketing department so much as just, are your populations within your departments looking correctly? And is everybody saying the words they should be saying? Other than that, I suppose overseeing DEI trainings, which are just struggle sessions. Otherwise, a CDO is a complete outsider. They offer practically nothing measurably beneficial to a business, except to bother people. So I can understand why a lot of chief diversity officers feel isolated and like they don't belong. It's got very little to do with the pushback at state and local levels, save for the fact that their jobs may be at risk. because businesses simply can't justify them anymore, either financially or potentially legally. Moving on. Quote, the minute this became an uncomfortable political situation, the CDOs were left out to dry, Grimm said. Quote, nobody should feel isolated and wrong for doing the job they were hired to do, unquote. Isolated, again, I think that's just a nature of the beast. Wrong? Well, insofar as they are fulfilling the role they were hired to do, no, they shouldn't feel wrong. What they're doing and promoting is, I think, ethically, morally, and conceivably legally wrong. But that's a whole other conversation. While the interviews were conducted before Trump took office, okay, Chief Diversity Officer's fears and anxieties have only escalated since the administration put out an anti-DEI directives of its own, said Caleb L. Briscoe, Assistant Professor of Adult and Higher Education at University of Oklahoma, who has also conducted research on diversity officers' experiences under DEI bans. There haven't been many DEI bans yet, but anyway. Quote, the federal climate has only further exacerbated the mental and physical health challenges, she said. Quote, they feel the weight of it, unquote. Well, they were hired into a nonsense job that should have never been there in the first place, and now the chickens are coming home to roost. They should find a different line of work. I don't know what to tell you. The high on the hog years were about 2019 through 2023. That's about it. Prior to that, so-so. But yeah, when you could really just like not care about the consequences, 2019, maybe 2018. 2018 through 2023, early 2023, that was the sweet spot. If you were a DEI advocate or DEI consultant, that's when the paydays were big. Navigating the war on DEI. The report outlines some of the ways chief diversity officers have met the challenges posed by proposed or implemented state DEI bans. And we'll be talking about one of those in process in Iowa shortly. Most chief diversity officers reported taking what the report calls a proaction approach to pending DEI legislation, making changes in response, even if not yet legally mandatory, to try and deflect any further political meddling on their campuses. For example, some preemptively renamed or reorganized DEI offices and programs, adopted new terminology, or changed their communication strategies. Others, facing already enacted DEI bans, described having to eliminate staff positions and student support services. So yes, hide. That's the first strategy. Hide. Disguise yourself as something else. Now, this is why the specific legislation on DEI to me is counterproductive, but we'll talk about that. Even as they were making such changes, some chief diversity officers engaged in dialogue with governing board members and state lawmakers in the hopes of heading off any future policies that could further limit DEI. That approach proved, quote, successful, unquote, for some weathering political storms, Grimm said. Quote, and when I say successful, sometimes success doesn't mean saving your division. I was successful. Sometimes it means getting people jobs once your division was dissolved. Right, so everybody that's working on DEI, I'm afraid your positions are going away, but I'll get you a job somewhere else in the company where you can continue the good work. Just don't tell anybody. Change your title. The first rule of DEI, do not talk about DEI. The second rule of DEI, don't get caught. Sometimes it means getting people jobs once your division was dissolved. It's just a really disturbing time for anybody who cares about diversity of identity or thought in higher education. Hold the phone. It has never been about diversity of thought. Give me a break. Diversity of identity. Yeah, if you want to make race an identity. You know who does that? Racists. Some chief diversity officers embraced an approach the report calls strategic inaction. Okay. You know, I take strategic inaction every morning when I don't get out of bed right away because I'm warm and I'm comfy. But it's strategery. You see, it's not me just being lazy, it's strategery. Strategic inaction, meaning they didn't make any organizational or structural changes, avoiding early or unnecessary compliance with potential or future anti-DEI policies. So we didn't change anything. Okay. They also sought advice from colleagues at other institutions in the state or peers in states with similar legislation. Strategic inaction. We're going to wait until we have to do something. Okay. Quote, I'm not considering shifting until I have to. I've been doing this long enough to not be shaken by things that I shouldn't be shaken by. I've seen it all, said a chief diversity officer anonymously quoted in the report. I'm not going to do anything till I'm told to. Okay, fair enough, I suppose. CDOs are not well. Well, I think that's probably been true the entire time. But the report found that many chief diversity officers were shaken by their experiences of being scrutinized or mischaracterized by DEI opponents. Some described feeling silenced, uncertain about their job security, and isolated from other executive leaders. Whose fault is that? Quote, some CDOs really talked about how they felt like kryptonite on their campus, Grimm said. Quote, their president and provost wouldn't talk to them anymore. Nobody wanted to collaborate just because they didn't want this unwanted political attention, unquote. Right. As long as nobody was questioning the validity or the legality of this thing, it was great. Uh-oh. The report found that chief diversity officers were overwhelmed with stress and anxiety and struggling with their mental health. Some reported physical symptoms like hypertension and sleep problems. I know what the cure is. Quit. Briscoe said these results are consistent with her study on the experiences of entry and mid-level diversity professionals under state DEI bans. But it was jarring to her that chief diversity officers, executive-level administrators, it really is just titles, guys, it doesn't mean anything, interviewed for the report seemed to feel just as isolated as the staff under them included in her study. Quote, these are individuals who should have the most autonomy to do this work, to make decisions about this moment, she said, yet they feel ignored and shut out of these decisions by other university leaders. Well, they had the unfortunate luck of turning a grift into a job and then that grift being called out. I don't know what to tell you. Quote, it's apparent in this report, it's apparent from the data that I have, the stress, anxiety, the fatigue, the trauma. CDOs are not well, she said. Quote, the reality is they are constantly having to worry about not just their own livelihood, but the livelihoods of staff members, the sustainability of programs. This is their legacy. This is their work, unquote. Well, it's a legacy of shame as far as I'm concerned. But, to each their own. Sean Harper, university professor and provost professor of education, business, and public policy. That's a long list of things at the University of Southern California, and an inside higher ed contributor said he's seen in real time how chief diversity officers are struggling. Harper is in the process of creating a documentary about the experiences of diversity officers as state and federal attacks on DEI continue to ramp up. That's a documentary I'd like to see. I'd like to see that documentary. I wonder if it'll be biased in any particular way. Quote, imagine waking up every day wondering if today is the day that you're going to be fired, said Harper. Yeah, what is that like? Let me think back to so many friends and associates of mine during COVID, when everything was locked down against people's will and people were being denied the opportunity to run their own businesses. Gosh, I wonder what that was like. Oh, but those were people doing honest jobs for honest days' pay. Oh, but no, these are individuals that are being paid to be outwardly discriminatory against people and push identity politics. You know what? Find better work. That's all I got to say. Find better work. Quote, people are losing weight. They're losing their hair. They are experiencing gastrointestinal issues, all because of the stress of this ridiculous time. Find new work. And if you can't find new work because you have no other employable skills, I'm afraid you have wasted your years of professional life in an industry that was all a sham. He said one lingering question is, what will happen to their careers? To be completely pragmatic and cruel about it, I hope they completely dissolve. I hope the industry of DEI goes kaput entirely. As the kids say, learn to code. Are universities repurposing chief diversity officers in other roles or firing them, and where do those forced out or burned out end up? I hate to tell you this. Okay, just an example. I've been in my job at my company for just over 20 years now. Oh, no, sorry, just under 20 years. Pardon me. It's still about a year off. And so I've been doing effectively the same kind of work over and over again for 20 years. If my company suddenly folded tomorrow, you know what I'd have to do? I'd have to find a new job. And you know what is entirely possible? I might have to find a new job that has absolutely nothing to do with my prior career of work, because that's just the necessity of the moment. Grow up. If your job is causing you this much pain, stress, and otherwise, find a new job. I mean, for everything else that I might say about chief diversity officers and how the whole thing in my mind is predominantly a scam, I don't want anybody suffering ill effects or long-term damage to themselves over any job that they're doing. So really, just quit. Find different work in a different area. I don't know what to tell you. Quote, at some point, we will move beyond this current moment, Harper said. So for those who survive in their roles, I think it's going to be important to understand what does the future of the work look like for them after having survived such a precarious time, unquote. Okay, what they are doing is a job. It is not the job. They are not entitled to having the exact same job or line of work for their entire lives. If they don't like it, do something else. If the entire industry is falling apart, well then, adapt. That's what I'd do. That's what any of us would have to do. What makes CDOs so special? Or anybody doing the work? Nothing. Keeverdam, I'd like a new job. Well, you can find one. I know Keeverdam can do anything. She can do anything. Just have to put your mind to it. Advocatus, Scribelite isn't worrying about the people under you losing your jobs kind of par for the course for anyone in a leadership role. Why do they think they are special? Exactly. Man, imagine having to shoulder the burdens of leadership. You have accepted a role in an executive level position in a company or an organization. Welcome to responsibility, first and foremost. And secondly, if it's too much for you to handle, quit. Either modify the way you do your work, find ways to ease off on the pressure, or quit. Let's see. Susanna Ala-Richard, if they have IBS or whatever, they'd stink. Maybe people are avoiding the smell. Kidding. Oh, man. I feel so isolated. I don't know why people are staying away from me. I just don't get it. The Mum, thank you so much. Coming soon, Scribe at BK selling whoopers. I mean, if Burger King wanted me to be in their marketing department, I have some ideas. But you mean like grilling burgers? You know, I have, my sister has, I have yet. All of my early entry-level jobs were like clerk positions. So like a video store, selling watches retail, that kind of thing. I have never actually worked in food service. So that is not an experience I've had. But I've always said that either in food service or especially retail, I think it should be required of everyone before they graduate high school that they have to work in a retail or service industry position. So they know what it's like on the other side of the counter. They know what it's like to be in the face of customers and such, and also how to learn how to be a better customer, to have some empathy for people behind the counter. I think that should be a national law. Everybody has to work retail for at least 6 months to a year before they graduate from high school. That's what I think. What about you? Theater Winch Ginger, aren't executives paid enough for therapy or something? Oh, but I mean, the work never leaves you. It's just this constant drumbeat of stress and responsibility to do the work. The work. If you look up on my channel, the work. I did a whole video on the work in the olden days of the channel. It was a couple of, I think, junior high or high school teachers who had been awarded like Teachers of the Year or something for their work in diversity, in their work in being woke, and they were just partially ashamed of it. It's like, why should I, as a straight white male, receive such an honor? I just don't understand. Some of the saddest, soyest stuff I've listened to. Ugh. Anyway, so that's the mental health of chief diversity officers. Well, let's talk about some of that legislation that was alluded to. Let's go to the wonderful world of Iowa. Sweeping restrictions on DEI across Iowa governmental entities closer to becoming law. Sweeping restrictions on diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts across public higher education institutions and governmental entities in Iowa are one step closer to becoming law after the state Senate passed a House-backed measure clamping down on DEI efforts. In a 34-16 vote on party lines, the Iowa Senate on May 9th, passed House File 856, extending restrictions on DEI initiatives that lawmakers in 2024 placed on the 3 public universities governed by the Iowa Board of Regents to community colleges. The bill also set DEI prohibitions for state agencies, cities, counties, and other political subdivisions, barring them from spending any money appropriated by the state or from any other sources to establish or support a DEI office or DEI employee. Now, I don't have the text of the legislation in front of me, but by implication, there be dragons. And I'm not gonna stop bringing this up every time I read a story like this. All you're doing is giving them reason to change their titles, change their roles, just like as we talked about before. Just, maintain everything, but just get out in front of it and switch a few things on the stationery. It's not about DEI. They need to stop doing this because there'll be this petulant compliance or stealth hiding of stuff. All you have to do is, we are going to audit your programs and activities for compliance with federal civil rights law. Full stop. Nothing else, and then you actually do it. Is your program or activity complying with Title VI if you're accepting federal money? Is your program or activity or employment initiatives complying with Title VII? Yes or no? If the answer is no, then you get punished. That should be all you have to do. You do not need to introduce new legislations or new statutes or any of this stuff. It's completely unnecessary. But climbing down from my soapbox, GOP lawmakers have cast the legislation dismantling DEI initiatives as refocusing Iowa's higher education system and government agencies on workforce training and restoring a merit-based system, but continue to push proposals to expand intellectual diversity at institutions they say are filled with students and staff who lean to the political left. Okay, well, that's their choice, and you shouldn't have a hand in changing their political views. All you should be doing is checking to see, are they complying with established law? That's it. Audit them for compliance. That's it. In the House, Democratic legislators in the Iowa Legislative Black Caucus led the charge against the proposal and said DEI had become, quote, a punchline and weapon in the culture wars. Yeah, and whose fault was that? Though it benefits all. No, it doesn't. It does not benefit all. It benefits a select few. Senate Democrats warned it would drive people away from Iowa and worsen worker shortages. Really? A program that filters people out first and foremost on the basis of their skin color or gender is going to worsen worker shortages? Oh, wait, that's right. It does do that. Oh, that's right. Well, you meant getting rid of it would worsen workers. Oh, wait a second. No. Quote, this bill prohibits the rights of free speech of our public entities, said Senator Herman Quirmbach. Quote, it is completely contradictory to our constitutional mandate and our democratic principles of the United States. You know what? It's entirely possible that he's right. Because if anything in that legislation says, thou shalt not have any programs that promote diversity, equity, or inclusion, then yeah, maybe you are punishing someone for using speech. This is why these laws are completely counterproductive. The Senate in March passed a narrower measure banning cities and counties from operating DEI offices, but that never gained traction in the House. Senator Ken Rosenboom, Republican of Pella, said this legislation was needed because of, quote, the direction some have gone in the extreme to push DEI initiatives, unquote, at state institutions. Quote, I would suggest that the opposite of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is MEI, merit, excellence, and intelligence, Rosenboom said. Probably got that off of a Twitter feed. Taxpayer-funded entities, which includes, in this case, our state institutions and community colleges, do not exist to promote politically divisive ideologies, unquote. The laws already exist. They're already there. Use them. What changes did the Iowa Senate make to the bill? Senate lawmakers amended the bill to remove language that would have blocked private colleges and universities from participating in the Iowa Tuition Grant Financial Aid Program if they operate a DEI office. The Iowa Tuition Grant is awarded to Iowa residents attending one of the state's private colleges or universities based on financial need. The Senate also tweaked the bill's definition of DEI to bar any effort to, quote, promote or promulgate policies and procedures designed or implemented to encourage preferential treatment of or provide special benefits to individuals on the basis of race, color, or ethnicity. Golly, if only there was such legislation that already frickin' exists that you can lean on, but oh well. If only. The amended bill also prohibits efforts to promote, quote, a policy, program, training, practice, activity, or procedure referencing unconscious or implicit bias, cultural appropriation, allyship, transgender ideology, microaggressions, group marginalization, anti-racism, systemic oppression, social justice, intersectionality, neo-pronouns, heteronormativity, disparate impact, gender theory, racial privilege, sexual privilege, or related concepts. Okay, well, first off, I think they just filled out almost the entire bingo card for a TED Excellence episode right there. Secondly, prohibits efforts to promote a policy, program, training, practice, activity, or procedure referencing. You can't even reference these things? Okay, yeah, no. That goes, sorry, you have stepped right into First Amendment territory there. Right into First Amendment territory. And this is what I'm talking about. All of these extra legislations, all these laws and statutes being passed to fight DEI, entirely unnecessary and actually add more problems than they solve. Democrats warned the bill would turn people away from Iowa. The bill's list of what constitutes DEI would have, quote, unintended negative consequences, Quirmbach said. He pointed to language in the bill saying governmental entities cannot influence the makeup of a student body or employees based on race, sex, color, or ethnicity. And said agencies such as police departments should reflect the diversity of the communities they serve. Okay, so on this end, you're promoting the idea of hiring people on the basis of what they look like first and foremost. They should reflect the communities they serve. So, like, should only police like or something? Quirmbach feared the bill would jeopardize how communities and schools recognize holidays such as Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Why? Anti-racism and ending systemic oppression are fundamental reasons the late leader of the civil rights movement is celebrated, he said, but the bill restricts promotion of these topics. Well, again, I think the bill is nonsense. As far as anti-racism, I don't think you know what anti-racism means in the modern day. I don't know if you know what that means. Everybody thinks they know what it means when they think they're doing the good thing. But when you actually listen to what anti-racism requires of you to believe, it's not a very good thing. And as far as systemic oppression is concerned, tell me what DEI does again. Tell me what DEI values and what it does not. Then talk to me about systemic oppression. Quote, no matter how innocuous, no matter how universally held, no matter how reflective of the community, you can't adopt anything, any policy, program, training, etc. That's anti-racism. So where does that leave us, Quimbach said. Well, if it was just that, I'd say that leaves us in a much better place than we started. But it's not just that, because they packed in a whole bunch of other stuff and tried to say you're not even allowed to reference it. You're not even allowed to talk about this. Okay, now you're stepping all over the First Amendment. Senator Molly Donahue of Cedar Rapids said dismantling DEI programs strips away resources that contribute to student success. Well, yes, if you're talking about lowering standards to achieve that whole equity thing, that would reduce resources contributing to student success, now that you've made success a participation badge, but that aside, including boosting graduation and retention rates. Yeah, how exactly are you boosting graduation rates? Yeah, by making it easier to graduate. All right, you lower the standards so that the demographic split of graduates looks better by the time you get to the end of the year. Instead of like holding students to account and responsible for their studies, math equity, guys. She said it threatens the vitality of Iowa communities and workplaces. Won't somebody please think of the communities? Quote, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs are not mere administrative entities, Donahue said. Oh, they are lifelines for students from diverse backgrounds to provide support systems that help students navigate challenges related to race, gender, sexual orientation, and social economic status. By dismantling these programs, this bill strips away essential resources that contribute to students' success and well-being. Huh. You know what? I bet if you stripped away these programs and you held students to account for their academics first and foremost and put aside all the other nonsense, I think things would probably turn out better. I know. Senator Sarah Trone Garriott, of West Des Moines, said Iowa needs to recruit and retain workers while most fields struggle with worker shortages. Okay. Quote, we should be encouraging and supporting everyone to contribute their talents to our state, Trone Garriott said. Oh, really? Well, what about straight white men? As just one example. Is that a population that DEI promotes more inclusion of in its considerations? I don't know why I'm asking that. Quote, we need everyone in Iowa to be living to their fullest potential. Really? We need new people coming here. We need to hold onto our young people so that they build a life here in Iowa, but this legislation shuts down efforts to bring new and diverse people into our higher education institutions and job training. Describe for me a non-diverse person. Is a non-diverse person old and unwanted? And why? Tell me, oh, tell me true. There's Iowa. And again, by trying to, quote unquote, fix a problem that already has a salve, they're just complicating the issue and giving adherents to DEI plenty of, unfortunately, reasonable arguments against their efforts. So if you are in any position to advise someone in state government regarding DEI legislation or new initiatives, tell them don't. Tell them the laws already exist and they're perfectly fine. Professor R2 is in the house, literally saying that DEI means lowered standards for hiring. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we need to hire new and diverse people, not those old, stodgy people. Not those people that we don't want because they're not diverse. But never mind my talking about systemic oppression earlier. Jill Powers, the River Daughter. That includes dumbing down the curricula. Don't think we weren't forced to. Yeah. And that's the thing. A lot of teachers, they don't have a choice. Like the testing standards and what they're required to do and everything. There are plenty of good teachers out there that want to do more, but they're not allowed to because it'll make their numbers look bad. Or it'll make them look bad because if certain kids in their classroom don't succeed like other kids, well, then they must be racist or sexist or something. It's this Kafka trap. And they're not doing anybody any favors by lowering standards and pretending like they're the victims all the time. And the state legislatures are not doing anybody any favors by not simply enforcing existing laws, making up new rules, and giving these guys, as I say, legitimate complaints against possible freedom of speech violations. So, let's see. I will watch Rest later. Okay, Juliet. It'll be here for you when you are ready. Anything else I missed in the meantime? Dances with aardvarks, pardon me. Racist against ants. I mean, anti-racist? Yeah, it's true. It's true. I remember that aardvark. I remember that aardvark from my childhood. Wasn't that, was that Bullwinkle aardvark or something? Where'd that aardvark come from? I remember it from like PBS or something. It wasn't Muppets. Where is that aardvark from? Tell me. Also, I think I'm about to sneeze. Once. And of course, as I say I'm about to sneeze, then it doesn't happen. Pink Panther, that's what it was. Thank you, Luna. Yes, Pink Panther. Okay. I knew I remembered it from my childhood. It was a cartoon. But yes. Speaking of sneezes, well, not really, but speaking of things that can break your stealth, like sneezes, stealth mode DEI. Is this the new normal? And this is by Julie Kratz, author of Julie is an Allyship Inclusion Keynote Speaker. Oh, not author, probably contributor. An Allyship Inclusion Keynote Speaker. Nice work if you can get it. 2025 has seen a wild swing in sentiment on diversity, equity, and inclusion work. To learn more about where DEI is, I spoke with Dr. Purnima Luthra, professor at the Copenhagen Business School. Ooh boy, Copenhagen. Dr. Luthra calls herself a realistic optimist about the future of DEI. Quote, when America sneezes, the world catches a cold. That was completely unplanned. What are the odds? There are none, I tell you. That was totally psychic. My nose knew that was coming up in the article. When America sneezes, the world catches a cold, Dr. Luthra says. Or when, Wuhan sneezes, everybody has to lock down. During this decade, she has seen the pendulum swing from active and transparent participation in corporate diversity, equity, and inclusion activities to quieter, more stealth mode participation. Well, funnily enough, so have I. It's crazy. Stealth mode, known best in the gaming industry, is about not being noticed, you don't say, or purposefully being secretive until deciding when or if to become more visible. The stealth mode for DEI can mean doing the work quietly, often without drawing unnecessary attention to it. Yeah, almost like you're doing something wrong and you don't want to get caught. Are you going to mention that little aspect to it? Littler's research. Who's Littler? You can't refer to someone like that you haven't mentioned previously. Okay, Littler's research also confirmed that the biggest action corporate leaders were taking in DEI in 2025 was to minimize their public-facing messages. Coqual, Okay, recently published a report, quote, what majority men really think about D.I, unquote. Well, that's a throwback. Majority men. What do you think they mean by majority men? Where they found that the majority of men, okay, are persuadable on issues of diversity and inclusion, 48%. Wait, 48% equals a majority? Okay. And only 10% were detractors or naysayers. So what happened to the other 42%? Okay. This means that most of our allies are in the movable middle, where they are open to issues of inclusion. Oh my gosh, the movable middle. Only 10% were detractors. Majority men. I wonder who the majority men were. Stealth mode helps us meet this movable middle where they are at, covertly doing impactful DEI work. Well, yeah, if you lie about what you're doing to people, if you're dishonest about your motives and intentions to people, and you use sophistry to make what you're doing sound good, and you get them to go along because they're the movable middle, and you convince them to do something that's demonstrably bad, but you've sugarcoated it, you've succeeded. You've succeeded in being a liar. Dr. Luthra says stealth mode DEI is about embedding DEI into the full employee experience, from hiring to onboarding to performance to marketing. Hey, you know what? Stealth mode DEI sounds a lot like regular DEI. I don't know. Dr. Luthra recommends reviewing language in job postings and descriptions to remove bias. That's been quote-unquote advice for the last 10 years. Casting the net wider on different job sites and only listing genuine requirements for the job. Dr. Luthra contests, quote, we tend to focus on what has made people successful in the past, which are nice to have. Focus on the must-haves. If you have hired someone without these qualifications, it is not a qualification. Okay. And that's going to increase the number of people who look a particular way in your company. How? Or is that just you quietly pushing for lowered standards? I don't know. To embed DEI stealth mode style, consider anonymizing your shortlist candidates and preempt bias in interviews with diverse slates of interviewers. Diverse slates of... Oh, who counts as diverse? Neurodiversity affects nearly 20% of job candidates. Well, neurodiversity has also been far more commonly diagnosed these days than in past years. But anyway, the question leaders need to ask is, how can we make it more hiring neuro-inclusive? Yeah, make it more Wait, okay. This is not my fault. This is not my fault. I'm trying to read it as it's written. The question leaders need to ask is, how can we make it more hiring, more neuro-inclusive? For example, Dr. Luthra works with organizations that interview while doing Legos together. Oh, God. Oh, God. I'll tell you, though. I'll tell you what. I mean, if I had a job interview that was going on while we were playing, like, Dungeons and Dragons, I might think it's a pretty cool place to work. I won't deny it. I won't deny it. But Legos... Ay, caramba. Okay, for example, Dr. Luthra works with organizations that interview while doing Legos together, or walking interviews for those that do not prefer eye contact. When in doubt, ask for input on how the interview is done. The candidate will perform better if they feel comfortable, which is a win-win for both the organization and individual. Okay, so everybody, stealth mode DEI means playing with Legos while interviewing for a professional role. Okay, onboarding. DEI stealth mode could also look like embedding inclusion principles in onboarding. What? Okay, what are you talking about? This is just DEI. And I should know. For years and years and years, the line has been DEI has to be baked into every aspect of our business. It's not just a nice to have. It is a business imperative. That has been the rallying cry for a decade now. Nothing that's being described here so far is any different than quote unquote visible DEI. So how is this stealth mode? First impressions are critical to reducing turnover and promoting long-term careers at the organization. If you are diversifying where you are sourcing talent, like going specifically to HBCUs, for example, you need to think about onboarding differently too. How so? Dr. Luthra suggests organizations extend onboarding for those individuals from different industries or those with different backgrounds than traditional employees. What? Okay, you're talking abstracts. I don't know what you mean. There may be implied assumptions that center on the industry or dominant group thinking. Okay, be sure to explain the implied culture or norms in practical terms and be clear on expectations at the 30, 60, 90-day marks. Pretend you were learning about your industry or organization for the first time. What would you want to know? You know, stealth mode DEI sounds both exactly like traditional DEI, but also like regular common sense for running a business. I wonder if stealth mode DEI is in disguise. Is it going all Decepticon on us? I think so. Performance. In Europe, where Dr. Luther practices, yes, in Copenhagen, organizations regularly analyze pay equity data and correct any gaps. Pay equity. Well, are they gaps created by injustice, or are they simply, a disparity? There is pay inequity beyond gender, which is also important to consider if you have self-identification at your organization. At my organization, I simply identify as a paid employee. As for performance, having objective criteria for evaluations and promotions is another stealth mode DEI practice. Wait a second. Having objective criteria for evaluations and promotions is stealth mode DEI. It's not just... You're not conflating DEI with basic good business practices, are you? I think you are. Oftentimes, there is biased or different feedback for historically marginalized groups. For example, women tend to get more performative feedback on appearance or personality, whereas men are more likely to get constructive feedback on their performance, which helps them improve over time. I mean, if you say so. Make pay equitable and performance objective and feedback fair. It helps everyone to do a better job, and this is legal DEI. Okay, well, tell me about the illegal DEI. Marketing. Okay, this is the last section. Marketing. This is where the lack of DEI can be costly. Oh, making a big mistake by being unintentionally non-inclusive has severe, lasting consequences. All right, I worked with a client that was a baby formula startup. A baby formula startup, okay? As they started to scale, they made marketing decisions very quickly to adapt to shifting consumer needs, often without consulting a diverse array of people first. Okay, I can't wait to hear this one. On one occasion, they had a photo shoot set up with cotton overtly featured in the background, which can be triggering for black people or people whose ancestors were enslaved. I haven't seen the vampire movie Sinners yet, but I gotta ask, instead of crosses, did the vampire hunters hold up stalks of cotton? I just... That is some of the most racist shit. Really? Really? Keep cotton away from black people. It's their kryptonite. Luckily, someone commented on the problem and it was fixed before the shoot. Mistakes like this can harm a brand's reputation long term. Diverse voices involved in decision making are good for business. I will bet you $1 zillion that the person that alerted them to the problem of cotton offending black people was a white person. I will bet you $1 zillion that is the case. Some racist white person decided to go all nanny state on this thing. And you're like, oh, you can't show that. That'll offend black people. Dr. Luthra also recommends stealth mode DEI through inclusive design. Quote, the reality is that customers are diverse. We are all designing for a breadth of customers. It would be silly to not include them in the process, unquote. What do you mean by diverse? Describe a diverse customer. What do you mean? That two people who look the same have the same interpretation of things? Okay. If you are out and with no other further qualification, no further context, how would you include them in the process? You mean like focus groups? I've never heard of that before. Gosh, what a concept. What do you mean? If you are pivoting to stealth mode DEI, you haven't even defined that. Dr. Luther also recommends pivoting to Pivoting to meritocracy, well, that means getting rid of DEI. Despite its embrace by conservatives, DEI has always been meant to ensure merit-based decision. Okay, now you're just lying. That is definitely stealth mode DEI, to say that DEI has always meant to ensure merit-based decisions. Dr. Luther recommends asking, quote, what would it take to design a process to ensure there is merit? Disregarding race, disregarding gender, and just seeing to someone's skills, education, and ability to fulfill a job. That's it. Not putting any weight, any point favoring, or anything else on anything other than possessed skill, education, and merit. That's it. I know, it's a crazy idea. If only we had some laws that helped, reinforce that in hiring processes. Oh, but they're in Copenhagen, so who knows what's going on over there. Good gravy. Keeverdam, Q-tip commercials offend black people. Yeah. Those ads for cotton in general? Yeah, obviously. Professor R2, I'm triggered by polyester. I remember that polyester, if I'm not mistaken, and someone can correct me, I believe that was one of Carmen Sandiego's gang in one of the old Broderbund Carmen Sandiego games. I think polyester and Fast Eddie B or something. Yeah. I remember when I had that game, it was for my PC, my actual old PC, like an IBM PC Junior or whatever, with 256K memory. It came with a little profiles of each of the bad guys in Carmen Sandiego's gang. There's like an actual photograph of somebody posing as Fast Eddie and someone else as polyester and all that. Man, those were the days. When being a kid was cool and video games were neat and they came with neat stuff. Yeah. Standing Bear, this conversation is too stupid by. Oh. Well, it's not actually a conversation. I'm doing a broadcast. It's more like a glorified lecture, I suppose. So, I mean, although I try to have stilted conversations with my other, viewers as I can through comments and things. Kay Roberts, and now the news is reporting HR specialists are in crisis when businesses cut them. Yeah, I know. When we no longer require your services, I feel trauma. Well, que sera. Let's see. Morgan King says, I remember that show. No, I'm not talking about Carmen Sandiego, the show. I'm talking about Carmen Sandiego, the original PC Broderbund computer game that taught you all about geography and history and all that good stuff. Kieverdam sent you a DM for later. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Anyway, moving on. Let's talk about some more DEI in politics. Opinion. Political leaders use DEI as a smokescreen to roll back human and civil rights. Oh boy. Well, again, depending on what some of these state legislations say, this is why state legislatures would be wise not to try to impose new laws centered around the words diversity, equity, and inclusion. You get people like this who put out opinion pieces that might actually possess a demonstrable grain of truth. But let's see. Last week, the Department of Education slashed $1 billion in mental health funding for schools. A month prior, the Department of Justice canceled a $26 million federal program designed to rebuild water infrastructure in a rural Alabama county where sewage regularly contaminates homes. In both instances, the administration justified these cuts by blaming one of their favorite culprits, DEI. Well, tell me the details of these programs. How is the money being apportioned? Are you going to tell me? I wonder. This administration has repeatedly sought to attack and disparage DEI as, quote, woke ideology, unquote. Well, truth be told, leftists did that themselves back in the day. I've got a few videos on it. Using the DEI label as a smokescreen, our political leaders have mounted a profound assault on human and civil rights, from rescinding a ban on segregated workplace facilities to dismantling the Department of Justice's civil rights policies. Okay, tell me how. These attacks threaten the very freedoms that Americans have fought to protect for decades. But while our current political landscape might feel unprecedented, opposition to DEI isn't new. The arguments made by critics mirror narratives, not minor. The arguments made by critics mirror narratives that have been circulating for more than 150 years, dating back to the Reconstruction era. Okay, so you're going to equate DEI, as I think is already obvious, with civil rights law. Our ongoing fight for justice is essential, particularly as the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion are deeply rooted in and inspired by the civil rights movement. No, DEI is an outright rejection of the civil rights movement. And it's plainly obvious, as I've made clear multiple times on this channel, and most recently simply by reading out loud established civil rights laws in relation to statements made by corporate entities and their surrogates. But, moving on, opponents to DEI often try to diminish or distort the intent of diversity, equity, and inclusion. No. I don't diminish or distort anything. I listen to what the advocates and proponents of DEI say, and I repeat it out loud again. And it speaks for itself. So don't worry. Nearly everything I've put on my channel regarding DEI has come straight from those who believe in it fully. They relegate DEI to a single workplace program. Oh, I don't. Or they portray these principles as discriminatory and unjust by claiming that DEI disregards merit and talent. Well, it does. It demonstrably does. Because it has a filter of race and or gender as its primary mechanism. So, merit is, at best, a secondary consideration. Pardon me. These harmful narratives have been magnified through social media platforms and polarizing political rhetoric, creating misunderstandings and resistance to initiatives that are fundamentally created to foster fairness, representation, and genuine equality of opportunity for all. Oh, I like that whole equal opportunity thing that was established back in the 60s. Okay. Well, okay, now you need to provide me some examples. Diversity, equity, and inclusion extend far beyond mere business practices. Oh, I agree with that. They are foundational principles essential for building a fair and just society. You keep saying similar things over and over. Are you going to provide us any examples? DEI means supporting the 18 million veterans. No, it doesn't. They always use veterans. They always use veterans as the moral ammunition. If you're against DEI, then you're against our veterans. You are out of your mind. Out of your mind. DEI means supporting the 18 million veterans living in the U.S. by facilitating their successful reintegration and active participation in society. Yeah, because the Veterans Administration and established and meaningful veterans groups have never existed without DEI. Oh gosh, thank goodness for the veterans ERGs in corporate America, all thanks to DEI. Man, I don't know what veterans would do without DEI. You know, without DEI, my dad would not have gotten the medicine he needs for leukemia. Boy, oh boy, thank you, DEI. It means passing paid family and medical leave laws that allow parents to adequately care for their children. Yeah, you're right. I can't count, and I want to emphasize this phrase here. I cannot count how many times I have seen DEI advocates and consultants push for paid family and medical leave as part of their focus in DEI. I literally cannot count how many times I have heard that. Oh, I guess now one. DEI means ensuring access, resources, and opportunities for underrepresented students. Oh, it does? It empowers all students to thrive. Wait a second. Wait a second. I'm having a syntax error. DEI means ensuring access, resources, and opportunities for underrepresented students. It empowers all students to thrive. But it just what are you talking about? With programs like TRIO boosting college retention, I've never heard of TRIO as far as I know, and making participants 47% more likely to earn an associate's and 18% more likely to earn a bachelor's degree. Wow. TRIO, what is, okay, I'll bite. What is TRIO? TRIO, the federal TRIO programs are a set of educational opportunity programs that enable students from low-income backgrounds to become the first members of their families to earn college degrees. Okay. Veterans. When was this established? 1964, huh? Or thereabouts? Oh, TRIO is diverse. Sorry, I'm reading something. I'll keep that on a different tab. I apologize. Get caught up in something else. In fact, I'm done with this article. Let's just go over to the TRIO thing. I've never heard of TRIO before. Let's learn something new while we're here. TRIO, Facts and Figures, March 2023. Veterans Upward Bound, Student Support Services, Educational Opportunity Centers. TRIO is diverse. African American 33%, white 34%, Native American 3%, Hispanic 21%, Asian 5%, and some purple area that's not defined. I assume that's where the people eaters reside. Current TRIO alumni in Congress. Senator Raphael Warnock. Oh my gosh, Nikema Williams. Gwen Moore. Stephen Horsford, Ilhan Omar. Oh my gosh. Well, if I ever needed evidence to think of Trio as a productive element of our society. Well, hell, if Ilhan Omar got there as a result of Trio, I'm sold. Did she get a family discount with her brother? Jesus. Ilhan Omar. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. I tell you. Let's see. K. Roberts. Let me check. Yep, still have both GI Bills. Don't see DEI anymore. Yeah, I know. Man, how do the veterans in my audience survive without DEI? How did you guys make it this far? If it weren't for DEI, heck, what would you do? What would you do? Abdicast Diaboli. African Americans 33% seems like overrepresentation to me. No, it's about parity. It's about statistical parity, Advocast Diaboli. It's not about, proportional representation. No, it's about aesthetic parity. Let's see. Scribbles EXE is stop word. Yeah. It's like sentence 1 says X. Sentence 2 says X is wrong. Like, what? My brain takes a holiday. Let's see. Boy, oh boy. How much do I have left here? I got so many things. Oh, wait, that's something different. Okay. What do we want to do next? Oh, yeah, I did mention this in the thumbnail and everything. So let's talk about fortune. Let's talk about the fortunes of DEI and shareholder battles. DEI is emerging triumphant in shareholder battles across corporate America, from Coca-Cola to Berkshire Hathaway. Oh boy. No matter where you stand politically, it's hard to deny that it's been a banner year for the anti-DEI movement. I agree so far, but I'm still waiting for that. I'm still waiting for the shoe to drop on a couple of things. President Donald Trump has issued executive orders designed to stamp out diversity practices in both the private and public sector, and several large companies have rolled back their DEI programs. This culture shift was the backdrop to several recent anti-DEI shareholder votes at companies ranging from Coca-Cola to Apple, as activists tried to ramp up the fight over diversity and inclusion policies. But while anti-DEI proposals have become more common, they are not gaining in popularity. At companies ranging from Coca-Cola to Apple, you keep saying ranging from Coca-Cola to Apple. Let's see, that's 1, that's 2, and Coca-Cola to, okay, well, Coca-Cola to Berkshire, okay, that's twice. Twice in the same paragraph. All right. Investors asked to vote on anti-DEI resolutions are not biting. Across the board, support for these proposals has ranged from only 1% to 2% of voters. Well, then I guess it's just fine then. And again, this is why there needs to be an example made of one of these companies that have been pushing and employing these practices all this time and getting away with it. To be sure, that has been true in previous years too. As a general rule, shareholders rarely vote in favor of politically and socially motivated proposals, preferring to let corporate executives make decisions in such realms. Well, yeah, that's why we have to make them not political or social, but legal. It is a legal matter. It should be a legal matter, not a popularity contest. Still, the fact that these proposals have landed with a notable thud in such a pivotal year shows a specific kind of corporate resistance to major politicians and anti-DEI crusaders. Well, I wonder what it would be like if it said specific kind of corporate resistance to civil rights laws. I think that'd be a more accurate way of describing it, don't you? Below is a look at how some DEI proposals have fared so far this proxy season. Okay, Bristol Myers Squibb. The National Center for Public Policy Research, a conservative activist shareholder group, submitted a proposal asking that BMS, quote, cease DEI efforts, calling the practices discriminatory and suggesting it put the company at risk of discrimination lawsuits. That all should be very true. That's a common argument made in several anti-DEI proposals, with the activists citing the Supreme Court ruling that struck down affirmative action in college admissions as a warning for private sector companies practicing DEI. As it should be, because it is a quick hop, skip, and a jump from what the Supreme Court said in that case over to diversity programs in corporate America. But in its proxy statement, Bristol-Myers Squibb urged shareholders to reject the proposal, and the drug makers board explained its point of view on diversity in no uncertain terms. Quote, "We value inclusion and prioritize building an inclusive workforce in compliance with applicable non-discrimination laws, as do our shareholders," it wrote. Quote, "We believe our inclusion philosophy leads to greater financial and patient outcomes and generates shareholder value because it helps drive our strategic goal to reach more patients with our transformative medicines," unquote. Yeah, I noticed you didn't use the word diversity in there. Could this be the stealth mode DEI we've heard about? The outcome, the NCPPR proposal, was rejected by 97% of shareholders, with 1% abstaining and 1% supporting the proposal. All right, well, not to belabor all of this, but I'm just going to go down the list of companies and their outcomes, because unless there's something really exciting going on. Berkshire Hathaway had a vote at what turned out to be a historic shareholder meeting, with Buffett announcing his plans to step down. Shareholders rejected this anti-DEI proposal, and a similar one. Both received less than 1% of voters' support. I really hope the civil rights arm of the Justice Department is making a list and checking it twice of all of these companies that are proudly saying that they support and want more DEI in their businesses. But here's the thing. And I know this is the pessimist in me. Does anyone think that the federal government is going to put any real effort into investigating Bristol-Myers Squibb or Berkshire Hathaway or Coca-Cola for potential civil rights violations? I'm not optimistic. I want it to happen. It needs to happen. It should happen. An example needs to be made. I'd be amazed if it did, though. For Coca-Cola, only 1.1% of shareholders supported the proposal to get rid of DEI. Goldman Sachs, their outcome, 98% of shareholders in the investment bank rejected the proposals. Levi's, this looks interesting. The NCPPR had asked Levi's investors to back a resolution asking the clothing maker to, quote, "consider abolishing its DEI program, policies, department, and goals." But Levi's has made diversity a core value for years. Yeah, when I buy a pair of jeans, I really care about the color of the hands that made them. The Levi's board explained as much in this year's proxy statement, spelling out its philosophy on diversity in the workplace. Quote, "We believe in the strong business case for a diverse and inclusive workforce." The strong business case? You're not getting it from McKinsey, are you? Because it supports company performance and also enhances our culture and the well-being of those who make our company thrive, our employees. Less than 1% of shareholders support the anti-DEI proposal. Deere & Company, only 1.3% of voters were in favor. Apple, 97% rejected it. Costco, only 2% of voters supported. So here's the list of all the gigantic corporate entities that are pro-DEI. And the only way it's going to stop is if there are consequences. And the only people that can hold them accountable is the federal government. And will they? Yeah, colleges and universities are relatively low-hanging fruit. But private business, that's a tougher nut to crack. Blue ice cream, probably made with child labor. What, my Levi's? No. A company like, I don't know, Apple wouldn't engage in anything shady when it comes to their labor practices. What are you talking about? The whole point of the EEOC and more. Yeah, well, the EEOC, and I need to look this up. I need to see if something has changed, because classically speaking, the EEOC has been underfunded, understaffed, and underempowered to actually enforce civil rights laws. And when they do, it's some page A12 tiny little article where they slapped a $2 million fine on some podunk company somewhere for something. So it never makes headlines, it never has any real impact, and it doesn't send a warning bell to any other company about what they're doing. We really, really need something to happen, something major. And lastly today, we're going to go to an AP story that was, I think, published just today. Yes. Trump's anti-DEI battle threatens nonprofits trying to fill critical labor gaps. You guys. Again, if we don't have DEI, the pool of potential workers shrinks. Just think about that one for a second. Okay. Chicago, recruiting women into construction has been a painstaking but broadly popular effort with growing bipartisan and industry support amid persistent labor shortages. Really? Okay. But President Donald Trump's aim to stamp out diversity and inclusion programs threatened to cripple community-based organizations that have been critical to that goal. Well, you're going to need to explain to me exactly what the mechanism is between these community-based organizations and construction companies' hiring practices. But go on. The Trump administration has moved swiftly to cut off federal funding to dozens of community groups that implement programs on the ground, including apprenticeship, readiness programs designed for women, anti-harassment training, and child care and transportation support for workers who need them. Okay, well, I think maybe it's that first one that might be getting you in trouble. Because, I don't know how many times I have to say this, if you are an entity that accepts federal financial assistance, I know this card doesn't have gender on there, but it also relates to gender. If you discriminate in your programs or your activities on the basis of race or gender, you could have your federal funding pulled. Even if you think you're doing it in a benevolent way, it doesn't matter. So, the overhaul stems from a pair of anti-DEI executive orders, which direct federal agencies to cancel all, quote, equity-related, unquote, grants and require government contractors and recipients of federal funds to certify, under threat of severe financial penalties, that they do not operate DEI programs that violate anti-discrimination laws. And that is the key point there. Programs that violate anti-discrimination laws. You can call something a DEI program as long as it doesn't violate anti-discrimination laws like, oh, I don't know, Title VI. Then you're not in any danger. But you have to certify that. If you can't do it, then you might be breaking the law. Long established law. The orders have set off a scramble among many corporations, universities, law firms, and major philanthropies to figure out how to adapt their DEI policies to avoid losing federal funding. Well, I mean, I have some cheap advice for you. It's been sitting there since 1964. How do you modify your practices? Don't be racist, don't be sexist. Kind of easy. Kind of easy. Unless you're a racist and a sexist, then I guess maybe it's not so easy. But for nonprofits whose very mission involves providing services to historically marginalized communities, the executive orders pose an existential threat, driving several lawsuits alleging Trump's orders are impossible to comply with because they are so vague about what constitutes illegal DEI. I have news for you. Boy, oh boy, have I brought you clarity. Clarity from 1964. Good grief.
I don't know. What does it mean to violate the law? I have no idea. Boy, oh boy, I just have this program that gives money to people because of their skin color. What could I possibly be doing wrong, guys? I'm not... what's illegal?
Stakeholders in the construction industry are closely following a lawsuit filed by Chicago Women in Trades, an organization founded in 1981 to help women enter the skilled trades. Other similar groups said they were considering litigation after the Department of Labor yanked their grants last week. Okay, about 40% of Chicago Women in Trades stem from federal funding, according to court filings. Huh. maybe you should just have, Chicagoans in trade. Maybe you open it up to everybody who wants to get into trades. And allow someone's personal interests drive them to your organization rather than you discriminating on the basis of gender as to who is worthy of such support. I know. It sounds mean, doesn't it? It sounds very mean. Because we're for diversity, equity, and inclusion as long as you're not a man. Also, hello to anyone over from Latino Slant. Welcome to the wonderful world of DEI Deathwatch. As the lawsuits play out, Chicago Women in Trades Executive Director Jane Velinga said hiring and future programming has stalled because the ultimate fate of the organization's funding is unclear. Current programs are continuing under a cloud of uncertainty. Okay. The sound of whirring drills filled the Ironworks Local 63 training center just outside Chicago during one exploratory training program that is reliant on state and federal funds. Oh, okay. Well, as long as you're not limiting who can participate on the basis of their skin color or gender, then you should be okay. About 24 women donned hard hats, work gloves, and safety glasses to practice assembling windows as an instructor looked on. 2 groups raced each other to see how quickly they could perfect each assembly. Another practices caulking nearby. Nothing I like better than a woman practicing caulking. During the 10-week program, participants spend a week exploring different trades with experienced carpenters, electricians, and ironworkers. About 70% of the participants successfully move on to apprenticeships. And who is selected for this program, might I ask? And on what basis are they allowed to participate? Sam Barraza, 24, joined the program after struggling with an office job due to ADHD. During a rotation with the Bricklayers Union, Barraza was hired as an apprentice in tuck pointing, a masonry repair process used to restore older buildings. But Barraza, who is non-binary, no, Barraza is not non-binary. There's no such thing as non-binary. Barraza, who is non-binary, so it's a woman. So what you're telling me without telling me is that it's a woman. Okay. Said they would never have understood how to get a foothold in the industry without a program like Chicago Women in Trades. How the heck did you join? Why would you slot yourself in amongst the binary? What are you doing? Quote, there are so many insider things that, if your uncle was in the trades or your dad did it, whatever, you would know, Barraza said. It's the first time I've been excited for a career instead of like, I just have to work to live, unquote. Well, great. More power to you. Why not just have a program called Chicagoans in Trades? Why make it gender-based, especially since you don't like gender? Government agencies, construction companies, and labor unions have invested billions of dollars to expand apprenticeships and other programs that draw younger generations into the skilled trades. Okay, you're avoiding the main point of contention here. We're not talking about younger generations. We're talking about organizations and entities that accept federal financial assistance who are discriminating in its programs and activities on race or gender. That is the problem. You keep burying the lead here. Why is this organization specifically under threat of having its funding pulled? Why? Whether you agree with it or not, why? What is the reason given? You keep jumping around it. Government agencies, construction companies, and labor unions have invested billions of dollars to expand apprenticeships and other programs that draw younger generations into the skilled trades, an effort that accelerated as the Biden administration ramped up investment in infrastructure and the semiconductor industry. Part of that effort has been programming to make worksites more welcoming to women, racial minorities, and LGBTQ people who have long faced bias and harassment in an industry that is majority white and overwhelmingly male. Well then, how do you solve for that problem? How many times have I asked that question? How do you solve for that problem? If you have not enough employees, as you've decided, that look a particular way on your job site, how would you solve for that problem? Well, I guess you'd just be hiring people on the basis of what they look like. And of course, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There's no problems, no questions about that, no established, long-held civil rights laws about that. And if you're an organization seeking to give training to people to enter the trades and you accept federal funding, there's absolutely no laws that might put a hindrance on you only giving such opportunities and resources to people on the basis of what they look like. No, nothing like that at all. Progress has been slow but steady. Women, for instance, comprise only 4% of skilled trade workers, but that's a nearly 30% increase since 2018 and a record high, according to U.S. labor statistics that have been celebrated by both women's advocacy groups and industry associations. Yes, well, I mean, if the Biden administration made federal grants contingent on organizations and companies increasing their workforces on the basis of racial or gender demographics, then yes, I guess those numbers would necessarily go up. Despite the fact that these things would be, and I'll be diplomatic here, legally questionable under existing civil rights laws. So, yeah, let's cheer conceivably unfair employment practices taking place as a sign of progress. Advocates say recruiting more women and minorities to well-paid skilled jobs helps alleviate pay gaps while addressing labor shortages. So advocates say recruiting people on the basis of their gender and race is a good thing. Okay. From being a target during the first Trump administration, Chicago women in trades received 2 grants in 2019 and 2020 under the Women in Apprenticeship and Non-Traditional Occupations program known as WANTO, which dates back to a 1992 congressional act signed by President George H.W. Bush. The first Trump administration increased funding for WANTO, providing more than $8.5 million in grants to 17 community organizations that serve more than 3,500 women. Funding for WANTO surged under the Biden administration, which awarded nearly $18 million in grants to more than 20 organizations. But the future of WANTO is in limbo. Limbo for WANTO? Last week, the Labor Department sent termination notices to many of the grant's recipients, saying their focus on gender equity and diversity no longer aligns with the administration's priorities, several of the organizations told the Associated Press. Well, that's something else that Trump doesn't get a whole lot of credit for, and shouldn't. He wasn't enforcing these laws when he was president the first time. I'm glad he got woke, yo. But yeah, not much was being done about DEI at the time. Of course, DEI was still relatively new-ish when Trump came to the presidency. Relatively, though I'd been covering it for years in between. But, you know. Roni Basden, executive director of Vermont Works for Women, said the loss of its $400,000 WANTO grant imperils a new apprenticeship readiness program aimed at building a pipeline of workers in semiconductor manufacturing in the state. Was it a pipeline of women only by any chance? I don't know why I'm asking that question, but was it a gender discriminatory pipeline? The program, using curriculum developed with the industry group Vermont Manufacturing Extension Center, had been scheduled to launch in the spring. Well, I guess if women are still interested in joining up, they can go apply for a job. Chicago Women in Train's Wanto grant is protected for now under a preliminary injunction issued last month by Judge Matthew Kennelly of the U.S. District Court, Northern District of Illinois, who ruled that canceling the grant would violate the separation of powers. Canceling the grant would violate the separation of powers? I'd love to know how that works out. If it's a federal grant and the federal government, that they can pull it. Okay. However, Kennelly declined to protect the organizations for other federal grants or to extend his protective order to other Wanto grantees. Why not? What's so special about this one organization versus anybody else? Okay. The Labor Department did not reply to multiple emails seeking clarity about what its intentions for Wanto or other similar federal initiatives. In his 2026 fiscal year budget request, Trump pledged to keep investing in the expansion of apprenticeship programs while eliminate funding to progressive nonprofits that focus on DEI. Instead, the administration proposed sending funding to states and localities to decide how to spend them. The Trump administration argues that many DEI policies pressure employers to hire based on race or gender. They do. Or unfairly shut out some workers from training and funding opportunities. They do. Another Wanto grantee, Maryland Center for Construction, Education, and Education. The Maryland Center for Construction, Education, and Education. Okay, sure. The Redundancy Department of Redundancy said the impact of losing its federal funding will force the suspension of programs to help women enter construction and other industries that are facing severe labor shortages. Tens of thousands of skilled workers are needed across Maryland in the next few years alone. Well, I got a simple solution for you. I got a really simple solution for you. Take off the barrier for men to enjoy the benefits of these programs. I know. It is a crazy idea to promote equality and egalitarianism in organizations and programs accepting taxpayer money. I know it has never, ever been thought of before. I get it is a novel concept that has never occurred to anyone in this country prior to Donald Trump issuing an executive order. But I know it. Just consider the possibilities. Quote, these are not abstract losses. Oh, I agree they aren't. There's a dollar figure involved. These are missed paychecks, shuttered training programs, and stalled progress for communities that need it most, the group said in a statement, adding that it was exploring, quote, legal and legislative avenues to fight back. All right. Construction firms have supported outreach programs to women out of sheer need. The industry is seeking more than 400,000 new workers this year to meet anticipated demand, according to trade group Associated Builders and Contractors. Well, as you've already told us, only 4% of the construction worker population is made up of women, and that's up 30% from 2018. So even with that increase, it's almost like, as a general rule, women aren't interested in going into construction. So maybe, hey, thank you, Polly. That's Polly from Latino Slant. For my homie scribe. I'm a homie. Oh, I feel so homey. Thanks, amigo. I'm a complete gringo. I know the days of the week, and I know some other stuff. My friend in Mexico City has taught me a little bit of Spanish. And I tried doing Spanish on Duolingo for like 6 months, and none of it stuck. I am the furthest thing from a polyglot. I just have not, except for phrases in German, phrases in Sicilian, phrases in Spanish. I'm an absolute loss. You know, if you airdrop me into a foreign country, I'd be done. I couldn't. I'm terrible. I'm terrible at trying to learn new languages. But anyway, that's an aside. Either way, guys, if you don't know about Latino Slant, go check out Latino Slant. My friend Polly runs that. It's entertainment news. It's all the insider Hollywood stuff with a Latino slant, if you can believe it. So go check that out when you have the opportunity. His show runs just before mine on Mondays. And he has other streams going on over the course of the week, as well as a website with all types of articles and publications on there about Latino news in the wonderful world. So thanks, Polly. Appreciate it. And hi, everybody over from Latino Slant. Quote, "We need all the talent and resources that we can get," said Vanessa Jester, okay, Community and Citizenship Director for Turner Construction in Columbus, Ohio, where construction worker shortages were especially acute. The company has partnered with Chicago Women in Trades and other community groups to expose women and girls to the construction industry. Okay, well, great. Just do that on your own dime and just not taxpayer money. That's all you need to do. But apparently you can't. Quote, "If these young girls can't see it, feel it, touch it, and see that there's an opportunity, they're not going to be able to grow," Jester added. Yes, because as we know, everyone, if you can't see someone do a thing, then you can't do a thing. Because a young girl can't see a construction site with people doing construction work and think that she too could become a construction worker. Now, unless she sees a woman doing it, then she can't imagine doing it herself. Because as we know, tomboys don't exist. Turner Construction is one of 800 firms that have joined the Culture of Care program launched in 2019 by the Associated General Contractors of America to address harassment, hazing, and bullying that has long plagued the industry. You mean like guys being guys? I know, boys will be boys. Uh-oh, did I say something? Okay. The association, which has 27,000 member firms, says on its website that Trump's executive orders on DEI have prompted a review of its initiative and resources, quote, to ensure continued compliance with the law. Well, that's a good thing. Good. That's all anybody was really asking you to do, is to like stop for a second and say, golly, is what we're doing in line with existing, long-standing, and yet criminally unenforced federal civil rights laws? That's really all that's been asked of you. Unfortunately, for a lot of companies, that's all that's been asked. I'm hoping for actual enforcement and penalties in the near future. Brian Turmail, the association's vice president of public affairs and workforce, said that while the language of some guidance might be changed, the organization plans to double down on culture of care, saying it's about preventing discrimination that drives away many women and racial minorities from the field. Quote, "There isn't any other way for the industry to be viable," he said. Yes. Yeah. Programs and activities that are discriminatory simply on the basis of their name and activities are not discriminatory, guys. It would be discriminatory to discriminate against this discrimination, I guess. No. Anyway. K. Roberts, just use the universal translator. Point weapon, then point for... Hey, no. That's not how I operate. Kieverdam says robotic construction workers. That would solve the problem. But, and they would be inherently, both in, motion and thought, completely binary. Let's see. What else we got here? Professor R2. Oh, pardon me. You said something earlier. See someone who looks just like them. Well, yeah, I have to see someone who looks just like me if I'm to believe that I can do a thing. All right. I mean, obviously, and I know you guys know this, Irate Alex looks exactly like me. All right. Sargon of Akkad looks exactly like me. Undoomed looks exactly like me. Hagbard Celine looks exactly like me. I could only imagine myself doing what I'm doing right now because all those guys look and sound and think exactly as I do. I mean, obviously. But Scottish? Well, I tried Scottish. I remember bits and pieces of Scottish. Feskerma, Ongs Nagelik, and Dr. Pepper. Now, I do enjoy a good Dr. Pepper from time to time. Dr. Functional, do I look like you? No, your helmet's much cooler than mine. Advocacy, the fuck? Are you some kind of changeling? Why? How did you know? I mean, from one minute to the next, I could be anything. I could be anyone. I could be anywhere at any time doing anything. I don't know, guys. Am I a changeling? Maybe I am. Either way, guys, that constitutes the end of the show for today. That is your DEI Digest, Deathwatch, doubling down, and dismantling in some places, or attempts thereof. But it's not dead yet. It's going to be a long fight. We're going to need some enforcement. I'm seeing a lot of rolling back and doubling down. I need to see from the government some serious enforcement. What's happening at Harvard and some of the other universities, it's good to see. But we need to see some wins. We need to see some precedents made, and we need to see some harsh penalties befall some of these companies that are refusing to comply with existing law. If you don't enforce a law, it's not really a law. But what you can enforce, if you'd like, is my Discord server by joining it. There's a link in the chat right now to the Discord server. Just click on that link. You'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word will tell me that you're not a bot. Actually watch the stream and have thus earned the right, the privilege, the entitlement to join the Discord server. And today's secret word is stealth mode. Just say hello, stealth mode, and I'll know that you watched the show. Beyond that, you can find me here Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for TED Excellence, where we take a look at off-brand TED Talks with TEDx Bingo for education and enlightenment. And by the way, this Thursday is my birthday. So I'll be doing a TED Excellence on my birthday. It may be a double feature. I might start a little early. We'll see. Maybe I'll have some guests on. We'll find out when you find out, when I find out. But that'll be Thursday. So even though I just said it starts at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, it might start at like 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern on Thursday. I don't know yet. Give a little extra time because it is a work day the next day. I don't get my birthday off or anything. So we'll figure that out on Thursday, but be sure to follow me on the X machine in order to find out all the latest on that, or the Discord server on X. I'm scribe_light. But beyond that, everyone, thank you so much for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is so well behaved. You have very, very little to do. And everybody who donated, either to myself or to the fundraisers, I completely brain froze about mentioning at the top of the show. Guys, at the top of the chat box, I got donation links up there for our friend Twisted Skipster, who's trying to start up a wrestling club for his daughter and her classmates, asking for a very modest sum of $500. So you take a look at that one. And then Angela Arriaga is trying to start up her own home business. Got a link up there for a donation page for her. So please take a look at those. If you can donate, please do so. But even if you can't, if you can share them out on social media, that would be appreciated. As well as appreciated everybody who donated to me today. Thank you so much for your generosity. Very much appreciated as well. Everyone, have a good rest of your Monday. I hope the rest of the week is a good one. I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon. And I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.